CM Punk addresses the rumors on whether or not he will be in Chicago on August 20th. Plus, not once, but twice, we're going to see Kenny Omega versus Christian Cage. We'll talk about that, along with a review AEW Dynamite next on the Squared Circle Psychobabble. My name is Michael Valenti. Joining me is Ralph Valenti. Ralph, very interesting interview done by the Sunday night's main event with CM Punk. They ask him point blank, is he going to be in Chicago on August 20th? CM Punk, doing what CM Punk does best, dismissively goes, let me check my calendar. Yeah, I'll be in Chicago, but not for that. I think there's a screening for heels that night. So, shoot or work?
This is a work on his part. I do think he is absolutely going to be there. I would be shocked. Look, I think that AEW certainly learned their lesson when they teased kind of the game changer, or what do they call it? Somebody of significance. I forgot the exact terminology that Tony Khan used.
Might have been game changer. I can't remember exact wording either.
And ended up, a big star. I think that's what he called him, or a mega star. It ended up being Christian. No complaints here. Christian is very good, but when you think of mega star, needle mover, something like that, you can't really say that Christian is that guy. I mean, he went to TNA. He did certain other things in other companies. He never made a huge difference in terms of like viewerships and rating and stuff like that. CM Punk, you can probably say that about. I mean, he was a big star in WWE. Mm-hmm. I think that they've learned their lesson from that, and I don't think they're going to try to be so suggestive with the way that they're trying to promote the show and try to lead people on to believe that Daniel Bryan and CM Punk are signed.
Right.
If they're not, they don't intend to deliver at least one of those guys at this show. So I think CM Punk shows up still.
I think he shows up, but I don't know to what level he's actually going to be a part of AEW. Now that, you have this heel show coming out on August 15th, which is this Sunday, I feel like this is more like he's going to be a part-time guy. He won't be in AEW full-time. He's there to kind of promote heels. And then, when he has to shoot another season of it, if it goes well, he's going to disappear. So the question is, are fans okay with CM Punk being a part of AEW on a part-time basis?
I think I would kind of prefer that. I almost prefer when wrestlers are there for, let's say, 3, 4, 5 month stints, and then they take some time off, because it gives them time to breathe. It allows fans to appreciate them when they come back. I mean, when you look at WWE by comparison, some of the guys like Kevin Owens, for example, he's been there for so long. He's been there for longer stints or something like that. When he went away for a while and then came back, it was almost like he was kind of rejuvenated. The fans wanted to see him again. Finn Balor, he had to go to NXT and he came back, and that kind of felt like a big deal. I would be fine with CM Punk being there for 3, 4, 5 month spans, taking some time off, going back again, working some bigger tier matches, because it makes it feel special. That's kind of what WWE does with Brock, right? They give him some bigger matches because he's supposed to be like this spectacle. And not only that, but AEW is still a very young company. I want to make sure that they are still giving enough time and opportunity to the good young talent that they have, especially guys like Darby and Jungle Boy, the guys that have shown that they have a lot of talent, and they could be potentially a big star in the wrestling business. They just need the platform and the time to kind of show it. And if you have somebody like CM Punk who's there, obviously the attention is going to be on Punk and not those guys.
Right. I agree with 100% of what you're saying. And I think this week we did see at least a step in the right direction for AEW, saying that while we do have to bring in some of the nostalgia acts to bring in stuff, we are going to showcase the future. They've been doing that for a while, but last night was a very interesting twist into this plot with Kenny Omega and his title defense for All Out. Yep. So we did get confirmation. It will be Christian Cage versus Kenny Omega at All Out, which got a reception of CM Punk chants as soon as Don Callis said Chicago. But not only that, Christian Cage also points out that Omega will be facing Cage as the first match in Rampage history for the Impact Wrestling Championship. What do you think of this move, Ralph?
I like it. I think it keeps things fresh. I think it keeps things exciting. I think that it's a good move for them to announce this going into the big show. Obviously, Friday is their first show for Rampage. Christian Cage is a notable guy. He's somebody that has been well known in the wrestling industry and kind of beyond the wrestling industry, and from his time wrestling during the Attitude Era. So it's smart on their behalf to utilize his name and his fame to try and draw maybe some of those casuals in. I think that on Friday, there's a lot on the line, and I think they want to put things off on the right foot. So I think that having a title match without giving up the AEW championship match is a smart move for them.
I agree to that extent. And they have a lot of championship matches on this first Rampage. Miro is going to be challenging or defending his TNT championship against Fuego del Sol. Britt Baker obviously defending her title in her hometown of Pittsburgh against Red Velvet. And then this match for the Impact Wrestling titles. I like that move. And I do like if it's where Omega drops the title. It's not the AEW championship, because I think we all know where this leads to. Hangman's got to take the belt off of Kenny Omega. So Kenny Omega will go over at All Out, so that whenever that match happens with Hangman, it happens with Hangman beating Omega to get that championship. However, what happens if Omega beats Christian Cage both times? What does that do for Christian?
Well, I imagine it would certainly drive him down in the rankings. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing because, let's be honest here, Christian certainly is older. He's had I think we could all probably agree he's had his major run in wrestling. Maybe he can go on and win the AEW championship. I'm not sure, but he was a former champion in WWE. He was one of the best tag teams in WWE history during the Attitude Era. So it's not like he has a whole lot left to prove. So why not go out there and put over one of the younger, I guess you could say, up-and-comers, even though Kenny's not really an up-and-comer, but maybe
he's
a
not
newer
really
guy.
young either.
No,
he's 37,
but
I think.
He's a newer guy that's being positioned as a top guy, at least to the American audience, where most of Kenny's success came in New Japan Pro Wrestling, and maybe not a lot of the casual wrestling fans knew who he was until AEW. So that being said, Christian seems like a gracious guy. I don't think it would be all that bad for him to put Kenny over twice.
Now, the other thing that I think this actually is a good move if Christian ends up winning, because if Christian ends up winning, obviously that means he's going to be showing up more on Impact Wrestling. And I think Christian would do better for Impact Wrestling as far as rating-wise and draw in an audience than Kenny Omega does. Because I think what's happening right now is the people that watch Impact Wrestling for Kenny, for Jay White, for Juice Robinson, they're all the same fan. Whereas Christian, you might bring back those that watched TNA when he was there in the mid-2000s, or those that are WWE fans that are now watching AEW to see him, can now go over to Impact Wrestling too. So while I'm not one to say like Kenny was an absolute failure in Impact Wrestling, there definitely were things to say. He brought on pay-per-view buys. He did bring up ratings at one point, but now I think that success has plateaued, and they do need a change of pace. I don't see anybody on the Impact Wrestling roster to help with that. So I think Christian Cage can definitely be that. And maybe this is the start to a derail of Kenny Omega's character.
Yeah, especially when you consider there's a history there, right? Because Christian did used to wrestle in TNA. He was a former champion there. He had a pretty decent run. So, like you said, he could maybe attract some of those fans that were watching when he was there, and it might have a little bit better result than just having Kenny Omega go there, where there wasn't really hardly any history there.
Yeah, I agree. Now, the one thing I will say, this is kind of an issue, is that I understand the story was Christian won last week against the Blade, so he jumped over Jungle Boy to become the number one guy. But Jungle Boy comes out with Christian Cage, and maybe they could have planted the seed last night, like, hey, I know you jumped over me, but you know what? Kick Kenny Omega's ass or whatever. But instead, Jungle Boy kind of has a consolation prize. Next week on Dynamite, he and Luchasaurus will go after the Young Bucks for the AEW tag team titles on Dynamite. Do you see the Jurassic Express finally winning the tag titles?
I don't necessarily see that yet. And I only say that because the Young Bucks are doing such a good job in this heel role. And that's coming from somebody who was kind of on the fence. I like the Young Bucks. I respect them. But I think they're so much better as heels than trying to be forceful, trying to be like these face characters that just don't seem natural. And last night I thought they did a really good job positioning themselves as being some of the top heels, just, whether that's in the tag team division or in wrestling right now. I think that they're much more comfortable. So I would keep the belts on the Bucks.
Right. Now, one thing has been common, people that have been watching this podcast for a while now, I've said that I hate the Young Bucks, but that's a compliment because they are doing their characters so well that every time I watch them, I find reasons to hate them. And of course, this week, the whole basketball segment where Luchasaurus blocks the shot backstage. One more reason just to hate the Young Bucks. They're crying for fouls in whatever that shot was. It was a clean block, by the way. Luchasaurus definitely got all ball there. So, but I have a hunch that I think the Jurassic Express are going to win this match. I think they're going to, because listen, this is one of those cases where Tony Khan has to strike while the iron's hot. And I think Jungle Boy is over right now. If you're not going to give Jungle Boy the AEW Championship match at All Out, knowing that Hangman Page isn't going to be there, give him the titles here.
It's certainly possible. Certainly possible. I mean, I think that if you were to say like percentage wise, I think that the percentage chance that the Bucks are going to retain in my mind is higher, but who knows? And I guess that mostly depends on what they decide to do with FTR and some of the other tag teams too. So
right, and that's the other question: who else is there? Now I know. Last night they did do a backstage segment with Pac, Ray Phoenix, and Penta, where Pac told them, "Look, focus on the tag titles. I'll focus on Andrade." So are they hinting at another match between the Young Bucks and the Lucha Brothers for All Out? If that's the case, if they do beat the Jurassic Express next week,
maybe another ladder match, perhaps, considering.
Where else can they go? I mean, they already did the ladder match in the first All Out.
I know.
So, I mean, it'd be nice, but we've seen it before. Can they one up that ladder match?
Look,
yes.
Honestly, I feel like that they have a lot of tag teams. Sometimes it can be a little lackluster because right now, if you look at the tag team division, there isn't a whole lot of teams that you can see as immediately jumping in and challenging for the titles. If Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus aren't going to win the titles, I think that they should honestly put over a young tag team, and they should probably put over the Varsity Blondes, even if they hold the titles for a couple of months. Look, like Penta and Phoenix, the fans already love them. FTR, they're already established, proud and powerful. Even when they're not competing as a tag team, they're in a popular faction. So if you're going to do anything and drop the titles to somebody, make it meaningful and put it on a young tag team and see what they do with it. At least you'll establish another team. Right.
Now, there's another tag team that could be possibly being established here that may work their way up the rankings. And no, I'm not talking about 2.0. I'm talking about their opponents for next week. Darby Allin and Sting in a tornado tag team match. After Darby Allin did successfully win against Danny Garcia, we get the announcement that Sting and Darby will team up in a tornado tag match against 2.0. This is Sting's first match on AEW Dynamite. Does this help boost the ratings?
Does it help boost the ratings? I would think so, because one, Sting has kind of shown that when they advertise him and stuff like this, it does pretty well. And not only that, but Darby Allin has been a consistent kind of draw for them. So I would think that this probably works out in their favor.
No, I agree. I think this does help, especially because this week there wasn't really a lot advertised. And yes, you had the fourth labor Jericho. None of the matches, Darby did have a match, and Kenny and the Young Bucks had a match, but there were really a lot of guys, not necessarily household names just yet. Now, Dante Martin had a very good showing this week, and Danny Garcia had a very good showing this week, but there wasn't a lot of star power throughout the week, so I think that's why, the viewership dropped below 1 million this week. But something like this, something like the tag title match next week with Jurassic Express, definitely will boost those ratings and the total viewership back up, I think. And especially when you have Sting. I mean, they didn't really promote it as this, but it is his first AEW Dynamite match. So This is his first non-pay-per-view match since he didn't have one in WWE. So you're going back almost the early 2010s, I think, the last time he had a televised wrestling match.
not only that, but I'm going to imagine if this is going to be his first match on Dynamite, it would be his first match on TNT since he worked WCW, correct?
Right. Yeah.
So
there's
20
something
years. Meaningful there.
Yeah. I'm shocked they didn't really bring that up, or at least Tony Schiavone or Excalibur or somebody bring that up, that it's his first televised match on TNT in 20 years. You would have thought they would have brought that up, but I think it's going to be exciting. I love 2.0 Ever-Rise. I think, like I said last week, they're a great team to have on TV. They're entertaining, but you don't need to give them wins. You can have them be jobbers, and they're going to give guys wins. They're going to give guys good matches, and they're going to be used a lot, I think, more than what we saw from NXT. There was a lot of start and stop with them. They were used a lot in 205 Live, but let's be honest, who the hell's watching that? So, you know, I think this is going to be a good move, and they're going to really let Sting shine in this moment.
Yep, I agree.
Now, another guy who could be on his way back to the ring after a long hiatus is Paul Wight, formerly known as The Big Show. Segment last night where Tony Schiavone apologizing to QT Marshall, but up to the rescue is Paul Wight. And it looks like they're having a potential start to the feud of Paul Wight and QT Marshall. Now, I will say, when Paul Wight's music hit, I did not hear any "please retire" chants, Ralph. So it seems like the fans are behind this. Are you behind this?
I can't say I'm clamoring to watch a match between QT Marshall and Big Show. I mean, yeah, I'm gonna watch it. Also kind of depends what it's on. Is it on a pay-per-view? Is it going to be on Dynamite? I mean, yeah, I can't say I'm too enthused about this match.
I mean, it could be a decent feud to fill time on Rampage. Obviously, we'll see what they're doing with Dark Elevation and AEW Dark now that you have 2 televised shows. Will those be shorter? Will they put minor feuds in there? Which, by the way, speaking of minor feuds on AEW Dark, I'm glad they recapped what happened on AEW Dark last night, and that Joey Janela turned on Sonny Kiss. Right. That was nice to see. But back to Paul Wight and QT Marshall. I'm with you. I'm not like clamoring for this feud. I'm interested just to see how Paul Wight does. But I mean, I can't be like this. I mean, this guy was literally getting "please retire" chants 6 years ago. Like, are people that interested in it?
I don't know. I think that there's probably going to be some people who tune in just because they're going to be interested to see, you know, how he performs outside of WWE. And I'm sure he's going to perform just fine. I mean, he's a big guy. So, right. You know, a choke slam, the knockout punch. I mean, pretty much that's, I think, what we can expect from the match. You know, but let's just be honest. It's not like, as big as he was for however long or whatever, people can kind of argue that. It's not like you have a true, like, proven draw, like a top guy. Like, it's not like you have, like, I don't know, Rock or Austin coming out of retirement to wrestle.
Right.
So,
and I mean, it is what it is. It's something that I think caters to an audience that would want to see it. And, you know, QT Marshall is a heel that people want to see get his ass kicked. And Paul Wight, even at his age, could probably still kick QT Marshall's ass. So they just want to see him chokeslam him a couple of times. Nothing wrong with that. But speaking of heels that people want to see get his ass kicked, MJF versus Chris Jericho is definitely happening now that Chris Jericho survived the 4th labor of Jericho. I know, Ralph, last week, we went back and forth to try to figure out what the hell the labors were, if there's a 5th one before MJF, or if MJF is the 5th labor. Thank you to everybody who commented, by the way, for correcting me. MJF is, in fact, the 5th labor, and we know that the stipulation is no Judas effect.
MJF is Shang Tsung, and Wardlow was Goro.
Basically.
So MJF is the true final boss.
Right. But there's nothing like, okay, so Chris Jericho can't use the Judas effect.
And he can't come out to his theme song. And it's like, okay, that's it.
You don't think the fans are still going to sing the song without him coming out to it?
Well, like, not only that, but Jericho has essentially 3 or 4 established finishers. He's got the Code Breaker. He's got the Judas effect, which he can't use that. But if he can't use the Judas effect, he can certainly use the Code Breaker. He can certainly use the Walls of Jericho or the Lion Tamer or whatever the hell you want to call it, or he can use the Jericho. What the hell is it called? Not the Jericho salt.
The lion salt.
He could use the lion salt. So it's not, I mean, yeah, he can't use one of his finishers. I don't know. I thought this was kind of weak. I don't like the stipulation. I think it kind of fell flat.
Yeah, I agree. And the last two labors have been, when you have to go against, Sean Spears and he can use a chair, but you can't. Nick Gage in a death match, Juventud Guerrero, and you have to use a high flying move in order to win. And then these last two, and it's like, the story's kind of declined.
It's regressing. If I were to look at this, honest to God, at this point, I feel like for somebody who is probably the least well known to the AEW fan base, being Nick Gage, having a death match against the guy who's known for having death matches, who's a convict, is probably the biggest kind of hurdle that he's had to go across to this point. Mm-hmm. They've kind of gone downhill. And I even pointed out, and so did MJF, like Wardlow was put in the same position before in his match against Cody, and he lost. And he lost again last night. So.
Right. And that's going to be interesting to see how this story progresses with those two, knowing that they hinted at Wardlow losing to Cody in the cage match and Wardlow not liking that response from MJF. So does this start the feud between Wardlow and MJF and possibly one of them getting kicked out of the Pinnacle?
Well, what's interesting going back, it had to have been a year or more now. Isn't Wardlow like indebted to MJF because he needs the money for something?
Yes.
So they haven't even revisited that in God knows how long.
Maybe they do revisit it once this comes along because, sometimes they'll plant this seed, make you forget about it, and then you bring it up. And then those that remember are like, oh my God, that's great storytelling.
Yeah.
That's what they do sometimes. But another episode of AEW Dynamite, Ralph, is in the book. So what are your final thoughts on this week?
Yeah, it wasn't the most newsworthy in terms of the matches that were kind of presented before the show. I think that a couple people came out of the show looking real good. Britt Baker is a true star, maybe one of the most over females in pro wrestling, or maybe even one of the most over people in wrestling, even though that was in Pittsburgh, her hometown.
I agree.
Dante Martin looked great. I thought that the show itself had good flow because I thought that the matches kind of flowed well into the video packages and kind of everything had a purpose. It wasn't like anything was a throwaway segment or had no meaning. So in that sense, in that regard, I thought it was good. I'm honestly excited for Rampage, more excited, I should say, for Rampage after last night's Dynamite and leading up into it. I think that Red Velvet and Britt Baker should be interesting. So I thought it was an okay show.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't the best episode of AEW Dynamite compared to what we've been getting since they went back touring. But it was still a decent show. I was entertained for 2 hours. And I mean, the matches were good, but I just felt like they were a little predictable knowing that there wasn't much star power on both sides of the matches. Like you have Statlander and Nyla that was probably the closest to even star power in their matches. So kind of tunes you out of the show in that regard. But I thought the talking segments and the backstage segments really put this show through. If you made this more of a wrestling show like AEW typically does, I think it would have been hurting for 2 hours. But they did a good job implementing the talking segments and the backstage segments that made this a decent episode of AEW Dynamite. Not better than others, but still a good episode nonetheless.
What was the line of the night?
The line of the night, I believe, goes to Christian Cage after the fans trying to hijack the segment with CM Punk chants after the announcement of the AEW Championship match being him and Omega, saying, "Are you finished, you carny piece of shit?" And then following that up with, "Oh, I'm sorry, we're in Pittsburgh, you carny jagoff," which the crowd ate both those lines up. And that's stuff you need to do. That's some of these young guys. And that's something that Kenny Omega needs to work on because, I mean, I'm sorry. As good he is as a wrestler, he's just as bad as a promo. Last night just proves like sometimes people need scripts in wrestling, at least bullet points or scripts or whatever. But Kenny going off the cuff is bad. can't think on his feet.
And you mentioned young wrestlers, and I wanted to point one more thing out. When Dante Martin worked the hot tag and he got into the ring, do you know what the 2 moves he did were to get the fans to come up?
No.
It was the typical old as white bread with freaking peanut butter on it spot where you get the guy in the corner and you do the standing 10 punch count, and then he did a drop kick. So it just goes to show you, yes, you could do all these flashy moves, which he can, and it's great, but you don't always have to do that stuff to get the fans to react. A little bit of drama throughout the match, a little bit of placement. I literally wrote it in my notes. I said a standing 10 count punch in the corner and a drop kick is what got the fans to jump out of their seat. So as much as people want to talk about the high spots and all this and that, it's always about the emotion and the drama that you build in the match that's going to matter more than anything.
Right. Now, I do want to follow this up with, I know there's a lot of people talking about the NXT releases and, what killed NXT and all this stuff and work rate and characters, whatever. Let me just put it this way. And I think I might make a t-shirt out of this. Work rate does not equal buy rate. Remember that, folks. You could be an average to above average wrestler, but if you're a, all-star character, you're going to make a lot of money in the wrestling business. But if you're an all-star wrestler with no character, you're not going to make much money in this. So, but let us know what your thoughts were on AEW Dynamite this week. Are you excited for Rampage tomorrow night? And of course, CM Punk, is he coming next Friday? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to share us all over social media on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, SCPB Podcast. Subscribe, hit that bell for notifications, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Squared Circle Psycho Babble.